Hi, everyone, and welcome to the French Press Bookworks Author Roundtable. I am your host for the day, Dion Abulela, and I am joined by lovely Olivia Harrell today. We're going to be working on her query letter. James Stryker, our query ninja, should be tuning in with us here in a little bit. He's MIA at the moment, but we're going to go ahead and get to work, and if James pops in, then we will welcome him and his feedback. So how are you doing today, Olivia?
I've had a day, but I'm glad to be here.
Sounds like a normal author to me. Yeah. So we are working on your query letter today, and you sent us your query letter ahead of time. And it's funny because you said it's just something that I popped out real quickly, but looking at it, you've actually got a pretty good structure to it.
Yay.
What is this the first query letter that you've ever written?
I'll be honest, I have taken stabs at query letters. I have not sent one out in years, and it was for a children's book. I went online and I just found some examples and I kind of used those. That's my cat in the background. If he gets too crazy, we'll put him in another room.
We all have pets and they tend to join the roundtables all the time. So,
oh, good.
Yeah. That's wonderful. So you took a proactive step that a lot of authors don't take already as far as researching the very basis of a query letter. And why a query letter is important is it lets the agent or the publisher know immediately your writing style, your tone of voice, what you have to offer, and who you are as an author. So a lot of authors unfortunately think that it's not important and their manuscript is most important, but that's not the case. So a lot of agents or publishers might not even start reading your manuscript if your query letter is not tight and what they want to see. So let's get going. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna actually screen share your query letter for a moment so our audience can see it. It should do like, okay. I don't want to have this crazy thing going on here, so I will pull that over. Okay. So you have it formatted really nicely, and you've left the space here to personalize it for who you're sending it to. And this is typically the first thing that I hit with an author that they tend to miss is they don't personalize their query letter for their audience. So this is excellent that you did that. I'm really excited to see this. And when an agent or publisher looks at a query letter, they want to see that you took the time to research who you're sending it to. So for instance, my email is Dion at Pen Name Publishing for the publishing company, and I get a lot of emails directed to me that just say, "Dear editor." Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of like, you sent it directly to me, to my name, so that should be a clue. Like, right. At our website, we're listed, all over the website by name. So take that extra time, because for a lot of authors, when they're approaching publishers or agents, if the specific person's name is not listed, it's going to make you look lazy. So I love that you have this set out in this way.
Excellent.
Yeah. So the query letter, what I want to see when I'm reading it first is I want to know exactly what you're writing and why you're writing it. So he's such a cute little meow.
Bugsy. He wants to go outside and it's dark.
Oh, no. Yeah, no. In Idaho, you probably have cougars and bears, things like that, huh?
Not down here, but yes.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So you open up by saying, "I'm seeking representation for my Southern fantasy. Blessed are the peacemakers coming home." You give me your word count. You tell me exactly what you're keeping in the query. So you're telling me that you're sending me my synopsis and a sample chapter. And then you also let me know that you're putting it into an installment form. So what this tells me right here is that I'm looking at a manuscript and I need to evaluate whether the book can be a standalone book or part of a series. And this is something that a lot of authors need to understand, is that just because you've written a series doesn't mean a publisher is going to want to necessarily pick it up as a series. They may look to see if it's standalone potential and then sign the rest of the series later.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so this is really nice the way that you have this worded, and you open up with your word count. So this tells me that it is a longer book. It would probably end up being about 500 pages. So some publishers may not want that length, and some publishers may think, oh, I can do a lot with this, especially if it's a series. So this really, in your opening, is perfect and really nice for telling your audience, your publisher, losing that train of thought there, for telling them exactly what you're bringing to them. You have your genre, which a lot of authors leave out. So right here you put your Southern fantasy. And this is so good. Let me tell you, Olivia, a lot of authors either don't put their genre, or they'll put a very lengthy 4, 5, 6 category genre. And if you put 4, 5, 6 categories, it's going to tell me that maybe you don't know your book. And so what I want to see is, I want to see that you absolutely do know your book. Stop the screen share there for a minute. So I want to know that you understand your focus and your audience. So your introduction, I think, is really great, and I wouldn't change that.
Yay! Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
And really, for a query letter workshop, I was hoping we would have one that we could just mark up an XXX and ready and redo. And I looked at yours and I'm like, yeah, there's a little bit of things that we can do in here, but overall you did such a great job. So this speaks to the power of researching what you're doing. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, I'm going to go back to the screen share, and we're going to tackle onto your next paragraph here. All right, so your next paragraph says, I love when fantasy collides with real life. In Blessed Are the Peacemakers, Awen,
yes.
may have said, okay. Last of the Druid priestesses diverts Earth's destruction in 1042 AD by saving William. And what you're giving me here is your synopsis, like a very quick blurb about your book. And this part is so important because it, well, let's get interactive here. You tell me why you feel it's so important to have a good blurb in your query letter. What would it mean?
You know, it's like condensing the story into just, you know, like a paragraph, and trying to get the main elements in there so that it explains what the book is without taking a lot of words to do it. Just to give the agent or the publisher, the editor, an idea, you know, what is this book about?
Absolutely. Because I want to know that you know your book so well, inside and outside, that you can push it down and tell it to me in only a few sentences. And if you're not able to take a 104,000 word book and smash it down to just a few sentences that tell me the meat and bones of the story, you might not know your book well enough to publish it yet.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so this is really good. You tell me, I know the setting, I know the people, I know that we're going to be dealing with aliens. And the thing here is your blurb, a lot of times when people write secondary worlds, or their books exist around world building of their own, they have a hard time narrowing down exactly what that world is about, even though they've written it. But when I'm looking at your blurb here, I understand your world. I understand the problem. I can see the first act, the second act, the third act. I understand my protagonist, my antagonist. And I think you did a really good job with this part.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. This part I actually did have spent a lot of time with. The query letter itself, not so much, but I have quite a few versions of this little part.
Well, it shows, and I'm glad that you said that, because it's okay to take a couple times and write a couple versions and tweak it and spend a lot of time making it the best that you feel it can be. So I'm so glad that you just said that. It really shows.
Excellent. Thank you.
It really shows. And the other thing that I get when I read this is I can kind of feel like real world influences in it, and maybe some real world events that might have influenced the need to create a story like this in an alternate world. So I think this paragraph, the way it's structured, the way you tell me about your book, it tells me why it's relevant to the current world right now, even though it is a fiction fantasy novel. So it's excellent, everything that feeds into this paragraph.
Excellent. Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah. So let's move into your next paragraph here where it says, I'm set in Druid Hills, Georgia, against a backdrop of good versus evil. Blessed are the peacemakers. Coming home explores themes of family, home, family, and the need to belong, and the miracles that occur when we find our true place and learn to trust our heart. You really write from the heart. I can feel that about you. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
If not, why bother, right?
Yeah. And I hope that people who are watching and hanging out with us on this are feeling those pieces of you through this, and they're seeing how much I'm picking up on who you are as an author, the purpose for your writing, the purpose for your book. And we're only 3 paragraphs in, but I already feel like I kind of know you as an author. And that's what literary agents and publishers want to see. So talk to me about Druid Hills, Georgia. Is Druid Hills a real
It's actually, yes, it is. It's actually a suburb of Atlanta, and the setting really is there in Druid Hills. The places I talk about, are there. And now I've made up some things, obviously, but the actual city and the surroundings and the parks and things like that are there. So like if somebody wanted to go touch them or see them, they are there. So it's kind of like taking real life and putting a fantasy world inside it.
Very nice. Very nice. That's actually something that a lot of people are doing lately, and it is a challenge to not only do it well, but also to convey that message. And so between the blurb that you give for your book and then introducing the setting again, you do a very good job where a lot of authors right now are struggling in explaining the setting for their book in a query.
Gotcha. I have a question because I left it out because it was seemed to be extraneous, but maybe I started to say set in Druid Hills, a suburb of Atlanta, Georgia. Should I put that in or leave that out? So it kind of puts it somewhere on the map that people have heard of.
I think,
or does that matter?
It could, because it is going to change the setting of the book. Like just thinking Druid Hills, Georgia, if I don't know, it's the setting of Atlanta, I might think it's like an idyllic small town. And so we'll be working in like a far removed city. Or when you say it's a suburb of Atlanta, then I'm picturing, driving through Atlanta and the tall buildings and the potential for what kind of fantasy activity could happen in there, especially if we're working with aliens, and then I picture destruction in Atlanta and it becomes a little bit more enticing.
Gotcha. Yeah, and you blurbed out there.
Oh, am I back yet?
Yeah, you are. It comes a little more enticing, and then what?
So it becomes a little more enticing because I can picture a different course of action.
Gotcha. So maybe there should I leave out Druid Hills and say set in Atlanta, Georgia? I put Druid Hills in was because that's where it is physically set. But it really is just it's like part of downtown, yeah.
Okay, so I would say set in a suburb of Atlanta, Georgia, and leave out the Druid Hills and really target it for that.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. And then the rest of that, I wasn't sure I had, that was one of this paragraph about the themes of home, family, and the need to belong. I wasn't sure, because later when I was reading that, it's like, does that fit in a fantasy query letter? I mean, is that something you would include in there? Or?
I think that's an excellent question. And a lot of query letters that I see, the author doesn't explore the themes of their book. And I'll tell you why I like this, because it tells me that you not only know your book inside and outside, but you have connected your book to how it can connect to a reader. So I feel like by putting this in here and saying that your book has these themes of home, family, and the need to belong, it shows that it can also happen in alternate reality, as well as something that the current market and the current reader base can connect to. And the publisher is going to see this and go, okay, well, now we know where our reader is. Now I know how I can start marketing this book. So you're already putting one step forward into that relationship with your agent or publisher simply by talking about the themes.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I really like that.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah. And so now comes the fun part, because the one thing that we're missing in your query, Olivia, is I don't know anything about you.
I know, 'cause I'm a new author.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been writing for years, but I have nothing published, or, I have a blog and I need to spend a little time on it. And hi, James.
James.
Hello. So I'm sorry. I'm like the most horrible human being ever, because I really thought that it was 10:27. So that's what was going up on all my tweets. I'm sorry.
Oh, see, Olivia actually mentioned this. She said it shows
The 27th.
yeah, and it's the 27th my time, so I think
Oh, okay.
yeah, so it's 7:30 on the 27th for me, and so I think that it just got crossed on that platform. I think it automatically kicked it to Indian time.
Oh, okay. So can I be partially forgiven then? I really am sorry.
Absolutely, absolutely, totally forgiven.
Totally
Okay.
forgiven.
No needs. So if you want to go ahead and start with your feedback, we kind of went through it, and I'm really impressed with the first part of her query. I told her I felt like I really understood her book. I felt like she knew her book really well, and I could feel her passion and her understanding and time that she put into her book through the opening of her query. And we had just gotten to the part where I was getting ready to walk her through putting in her bio and telling the publisher who she is, because I feel that's a really important part to the query, because I want to know who the author is as much as I want to know what their book is about. But since our ninja is here, I'm going to let you take over, and then this will be great because our viewers can see what I've already said, and then they can see what you're going to say. So if you
Okay, and where are we?
You can start from the top if you want.
Okay. So we are good on time, even though it was supposed to be 9:30 to 10?
Yeah, I'm pretty good on time. I've still got about 25 minutes before I have to go. I have yoga.
Have fun with that.
So.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's headstand day. So if I'm a little late and I miss that part of the class, I'm totally okay. So. Well.
Super.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and I'm really interested too here, because I would really like to see what you think as well of what the feedback I'm going to provide, because really this is just feedback based on what's worked for me, and when I've critiqued other queries, what's worked for them. So maybe I'm totally off base with what like an agent publisher is looking for really. So I went ahead, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just agreeing with you, sorry.
Yeah, so you correct me if I'm wrong here in any of my theories about why to do what to do. So Olivia, I did go through and critique your query, and I'll go ahead and send that over to you as well. How I normally do that is I go through and I make little comments, track changes, and all that kind of good stuff so that you can see in detail things that, you know, came out to me, what I would change, all that kind of goodies. So yes, reading it over here, what stood out to me, and I don't know if this stood out to you as well, that I really liked a lot of the phrases and things that you use. I think that you can really tell by looking at this query that you have a gift with the written word. I think that wordsmithing is one of your strengths.
Thank you.
There are a few places where I actually think that you could be a little bit more creative and show some of that flair that you do show so strongly in other portions of it. I'm looking down through my general notes that I have here. One of the things that really stood out to me as an opportunity for you is I saw there were hints of, like, there was vagueness at a few portions where I would really like to know, for instance, what those insurmountable odds actually are. I don't know that a query is a good place to be vague. Tell me what those insurmountable odds are. Tell me what averting the coming darkness. I want to know
Okay.
what that is so that it will draw me in. There's a few other, looking at what is this person on the run from? Like, what's going on with that character? Something that I really think I'd like to see you draw out is some of the character development piece. I feel like you've built a world here, but I'd really like to connect with whomever I'm going to be reading about and feel that connection. And
Okay.
that I felt was kind of missing a little bit for me. Would you agree with that? Or,
Yeah, James, now that you
anything?
actually said that, I picked up on the world building, and I was so
Yeah.
brought into her world building in this that
Yes.
I didn't notice the lack of the character.
But, and I will also say that this morning when I read this over, I read it and I'm like, well, you don't even know that it's a woman who is going to be saving the world until you get
Yeah.
to the very end. And there's no names, no nothing. So yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I would,
Yeah.
I would like to know that. That would intrigue me even more because there is a lack of strong female leads, especially if that female lead is not involved in a love triangle. So,
Yeah.
Bugsy wants to give his feedback
It
as well.
really does.
Yeah, so that's an excellent point, James, that I missed because I was so caught up in the way that she
Yeah.
described her world in such a tight manner that I missed that. So great feedback.
And I think that
Excellent.
the world building, there are some really intriguing pieces to it that I would like to see come out a little bit more as well. Like I have noted in the cut, and I'm sorry I keep looking away because I'm looking at my notes, but the part that really stuck out to me where I had that, ooh, I want to read more of this, that didn't for me come until I was midway through that second paragraph. I'd love to see if maybe I'd encourage you to toy around with maybe starting with that, the state of things, for lack of a better word, because we don't get to, hey, there's this race of reptilian aliens that is trying to, do this horrible thing until I'm midway through that second paragraph. I'd
Gotcha.
love to see what you would do starting with, hey, this is the state of things and what's going on, and start from that world building piece.
Okay.
Again, just something to toy around with. The character building, the other thing that what I really liked, and please forgive me if I butcher your name. Is it Dion?
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, thank God. Okay. I really do see, as I'm looking through like manuscript wish list, looking at, different things, that what is a really hot spot right now is that strong female lead. So I definitely agree. I would love for you to bring that out. But what I also see a lot of, I wish I had, is that Southern piece. And when this was labeled Southern fantasy, I was like, ooh, well, that's great. But then the only thing that I see in here that is Southern is where it's set at. I'd love to see you bring in some Southern flair into like verbiage or something like that. If this is a Southern fantasy, what makes it different from if you had it set in New England, if you had it set in Australia? And I'd love to see that come into your actual query. Does that make sense?
Yes, I got to do something with my cat, guys. I don't know if he's bothering you guys, but he's bothering me.
That's okay, Olivia. So, James, I love that you just picked up on that as well, because right before you joined, we were talking about, she says that it's set in Druid Hills, Georgia, which is actually a subdivision of Atlanta. And so we were talking about how the difference between saying it's set in a suburb of Atlanta totally changes the mental image of the conflict and what has the potential to happen, as opposed to if I just think Druid Hills is a small, sleepy town.
Yes.
What do you think?
Are we asking me?
Yeah.
Sorry. No, I do. I definitely do. I guess
Okay.
what I agree that, yes, adding that piece in there about where it is set at, very, very important.
Okay.
What-
So we say Atlanta instead. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, what I think when I think of, there's just such that image, that strong image of the South. And that's what I think of when I'm going to pick up a Southern fantasy. There's going to be, again, for lack of a better phrase, that Southern flair to it. And I didn't get that from this. And I think that you have just even looking at the strength of the phrases that you have put together here, I know it's in that book somewhere, and I would love to see it get brought out right here and sell me on that, because it's such a huge hotspot right now.
Gotcha.
So how can we add that Southern flair in through verbiage without being too colloquial or too cliche, like without being like y'all, or how would you recommend that she pops in that Georgia Beach flair?
Well, I would consider what makes it, let me see. If this were set in New England, in Australia, how would it be different? And if you were even, make a list, what were the things that would be different? If it were set somewhere completely else, what makes it special in that it's Southern? And how can we put that in there? I don't think you need to be chintzy and put in like the y'alls and all that kind of good stuff. But even just, mention to me how hot it is and how that makes a difference, or, something, the cultural piece to it. Without having read it, you know what I mean? And I don't think you have to be chintzy about it, but
reference
does
more
that
setting, maybe like talk about the Fox Theater or the Atlanta Zoo where it ends. Not
sure.
necessarily.
Or so you've got here their descendant, a down and out disaster specialist on the run. Is there some phrase or something that you can put in there to illustrate that this is a person from the South? Or even then, when we're talking about conflict against the backdrop of good versus evil, is there a way to phrase that brings in some type of that? Because down, in the South, and there's, I don't know how to say this. I apologize. But there's those Southern values. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so I think, instead of saying good versus evil, is there even a different way to phrase it that brings in that kind of a conflict that's specific to the South?
Okay, I
don't know if I'm making sense. I apologize.
Yes, no, you are. You totally are, and I can play with that. Yes, thank you.
Even like I note here, the home, family, need to belong. Home, family, and I know that that's a widespread value, but there's a difference between home, family, the South, home, family, New England, home, family, Australia. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that you're touching on that as well, James, because I really praised Olivia for putting that part in, because a lot of authors don't address the themes of their book. And as a publisher, when I see an author saying, these are the themes of my book, I'm starting to think, okay, so she already has an idea of her audience, and then this kicks me into marketing mode a little bit to see potential for the book. So I was just so impressed that she understood the themes of her book that I didn't go further. So, all right.
Yeah. No, very, very good. And I do have a couple of notes in here about maybe tweaking a few like verbiage and things like that. Because I love that you put the themes in, because I critique a lot of queries and I don't see that a lot. I think that there may be some very subtle ways that you can change your verbiage. The miracles that occur when we find our true place and learn to trust our heart. I would love if you put a little bit of mystery into that, for instance, because that leads me to believe that this is going to be a happy ending book and everything is going to be resolved. And I don't know that and correct me if I'm wrong here, Dion, I don't know that I want to know that at this point, that everything's going to be resolved. Leave me with that mystery. So I think that there's a way that you could subtly tweak that to not reveal that, yes, they are definitely going to learn to trust our heart and miracles are going to occur in this book. You know what I mean?
A lot of bad stuff too, right?
Yeah. I love that, because I've actually, we had a very query heavy week. So I might be in a little bit of query fatigue myself. And I went through about 320 this week, and
holy crap!
I actually, for a query what not to do, real quick, I did have a query that, for instance, said, my one and only reader, whose opinion I value more than yours, thinks that this is my best book. And I was like, ooh, okay. So
could have left that out.
Yeah, wording is very important in how you put together a query, because this manuscript was really beautiful, but I kind of said after having that in there, I was like, you're not going to fit in with the type of family that we're building. And so that's the reason why the query matters. And I love what James is bringing to this right now, because you're picking, James is a fantasy author as well. And it's kind of that sci-fi, sorry if I'm putting you in that wrong genre there, but when James queried us, he had one of the most amazing queries that I had read, and I wanted to sign him so bad, but it didn't match with the rest of our books, so it would have been such a disservice to put him in there and have him kind of hanging there.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I love the book, but it just wouldn't fit, so it would have been a disservice. So hearing your side as being in this genre and what you contribute to Olivia's would be great.
No, it's a pleasure. And I apologize really quick here. I'm on the move because I got to grab my cord. So,
No, you're fine.
yeah, hang tight real quick.
Yeah. So while James is grabbing his cord here, Olivia, you said that you have a blog. So why didn't you put in any bit of a bio, or why didn't you tell me about your blog on here? Is there a reason, were you not sure of how to craft who you were, or did you just...
Yes, that is exactly right. Number one, I wasn't sure if a blog was credential enough and if it should be put in there. I didn't get that far with most of the queries I looked at were mentioning being published or being a freelance and all the places they had been published, and I had none of that. And I remember reading somewhere that said if you don't have any of that, then don't talk about that. So
Well, and I love that you're bringing this up, because there are a lot of new authors and everybody has to start somewhere. So what I want to see from brand new authors that might have not been published, who don't have journal articles, who don't have freelance articles under their belt, I want to see, though, that you're at least have an online presence and that you're trying to build yourself in some way. So to me, your blog does matter. And it also gives me a further insight into who you are. I can look at how often you post. I can look at how dedicated you are to your blog. I can look at the different types of things that you talk about on your blog.
That's the other thing. It's kind of fallen by the wayside lately, so I need to resurrect it big time.
Yeah, so maybe commit to writing 2 times a week for a month and then send a query letter out and keep that habit of 2 times a week going, because then that will show consistency and that will tell me, she's putting herself out there and trying. James, how important do you think having the bio and who you are as an author is in the query letter?
I think that it is important, but what I see also a lot is then people including things in their bio that is not relevant. I see lots of people, and I have 3 cats and 3 dogs and I do this and these are all my hobbies. And all of that may be important to you, but I don't know if it's important to how that publisher or agent is going to be able to sell that manuscript. So I'm very careful about what I put in a bio. I definitely agree with Dion about putting in, if you have a blog, if you have an online presence, I think that not only does it give them insight into the type of person that you are, I think it shows a level of professionalism and dedication to this is a career. It's not, I just decided to write a book this weekend and I haven't edited it or done anything, I'm going to send it to you. If you've got a blog going and you have an online presence, you're taking it seriously. And I mean, really, and again, correct me if I'm wrong here, but in most cases, a reputable publisher or an agent, they're taking a risk on you. They're investing their time hoping that things are going to pan out. If I was in those shoes, I'm going to be more likely to take that risk on a person who is professional, who is as invested as I am by having a blog and an online presence.
Gotcha.
So,
yes.
So would you mention Twitter or any of that kind of stuff?
I see things, scattered reviews on if you want to put your Twitter handle in the signature. I never have, because it's on my website. So I put my website on there, and if they want to look me up, then it is on there and they can take a look. I have seen a lot about if an agent publisher is on the fence about signing someone, that's where they're then digging into social media to see is this a risk I want to take? Is this a person that I want to deal with? So.
Gotcha.
And different publishers or agents might also have different requirements listed on their website. So because we are at Pen Name Publishing, we're micro publishers, so we publish less than 20 books a year. And we're also a little bit different in the fact that we're really community oriented. So for instance, I put our authors through, Julie loves me right now. She's in social media training. So
She does love you.
so we put our authors through training courses as well, which is something that's different in our family.
Mhm.
And I consider my authors as a family. And so when I have people query, for instance, on the Pen Name Publishing website, I have them send me, I request specifically that I do want to see all of your social media profiles. Because for me, it's not how well you're developed, it's how well you're trying. And it also tells me what I need to help you with. Because my goal is to help you grow and succeed to be the best author possible. So I want to know where I need to start with you before I even sign your book. So
Gotcha.
that's how we approach it. So always check the submission requirements as well. And make sure that you're, we covered this a little in the beginning about personalizing your query. So it's great to have a template, but then changing it to match the different submission requirements that people are asking for.
Gotcha.
Cool. That's something that I noted about your query as well, just a spot for personalization either at the front or at the, I usually put it at the beginning, but you could also work it into the end. And if you are also responding to a request off of manuscript wish list or a tweet, definitely make sure that you include the actual tweet in there as well.
Gotcha.
So that, you know, I mean, if they favorite it or something like that, I would put that
Right.
in. Mhm.
Yeah. Now, I personally like the bio and about the author at the bottom, because if I don't like what your book is about, I'm not even going to, I hate to be blunt, but I'm not going to care
who I am.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're getting, when you look at the fact that 4,000 books are published every single day right now, and we are such a small publisher, and we're getting 300, 400, 500 queries a month.
Wow.
So imagine what other people are going through or getting. So if I don't like your book, I'm not even going to look at who you are. So I want to know your book first. I want to get your attention, and then I'll find out who you are on the bottom.
Gotcha.
That's my personal preference.
And you would include that in, say, the 4th paragraph there?
I would. So after.
Okay. After before, thank you for your consideration.
Yeah. So what I would do is I would break it down, and I would give a quick bio about you. And I would personally, I want to know why you write. Why do you love to write? Why is writing your passion? So if you're not published before, just tell me why writing is important to you. And we talked about this a little bit earlier before you got on, James, about how some authors write a book, but you can tell that their passion isn't in writing. And so I worked with an author a couple weeks ago, and we were talking, and I asked a question about her character, but she couldn't tell me her character's last name because she had written it years before. And I thought, well, you're querying, but you can't tell me your character details. And so if you haven't been published before, and I can't feel that passion, and I don't feel that you're connected or know your book, I'm not going to publish you.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this, though, because something that I called out in my notes for Olivia was, in that second paragraph, it starts with, I love when fantasy collides with real life, which I love that phrase. That's great. But that was my suggestion. Let's move that somewhere else and get right into the good stuff. Would you agree with that, Dion?
I do agree with you. And I like what you said about when this second paragraph comes up, put that conflict first. Draw us into that conflict. Tell me what is happening, and just throw me into the action. And then I think you can even move, I love when fantasy collides with real life, into where you're talking about the theme.
Yes.
Gotcha.
That's a great place for it. Or even up in like a tagline. And I don't know how you feel about those, Dion, but I've seen a lot of people and a lot of feedback about, give me a one-liner right up at the beginning to tell me, what's this book about? Like, and that could be that fantasy collides with real life when blah, 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 whatever it is that is actually happening. A quick one-line zinger right at the front to set that tone and let me as agent/publisher know this is the type of query I'm going to be reading. It's when fantasy collides with real life. I don't know. How do you feel, Dion?
No, I love that, because when you think of book cover design, a good tagline can sometimes grab your attention more than just the title. So if you can grab my attention immediately from the beginning, you have a better chance of getting me to read all the way through to your bio. So I've never seen that. Honestly, I've never seen
Really?
the tagline in.
Yeah, where would you put the like in the format that I have? Where would you put that tagline?
I would put it right in that first paragraph. And yes, you have seen it, Dion. It's in mine.
In the grand, okay, so I've seen one.
I mean, yeah. I mean, honestly, I guess maybe people don't call it a tagline. That's how I call it, but I've heard it called a hook. So that hook right up at the beginning. I would put that right as your your last sentence of the first paragraph before you launch into here's the story.
Gotcha.
And I mean, really tinker around with it, because honestly, I've written queries where that doesn't work well for me. But in like the query that I submitted to Pen Name, I felt like it worked very well there because I wanted to set a tone. My comp title was Fight Club, and I wanted that to be known right away that this is a YA twist on Fight Club when in, or what did I put? In whatever I put. I don't know. Apparently it was good. But right there to set.
I can probably pull it up. I've saved it, actually.
Oh, that's right. Someday I'm going to write something you're not going to be able to resist, you know.
Well, I'm already feeling guilty. Like as you're talking about this, I'm like, you know what? Could we really have put books around you and created our catalog around this? That's the power of a good query when somebody wants to consider if they can build their catalog around a specific book even. So.
Hey, it still doesn't have a home if you want it. But no, I think that like, or even think about like, if you were entering a Twitter contest, what would your tweet be? Is there a way that you could craft that tweet? If you boiled your book down to one line, push that up at the front and see, okay, set the tone, let me know what I'm going to be reading as I go through. Gotcha. Something to toy around with it, see if it works for you.
And I have a few of those. None that start with "I love when fantasy collides with real life."
Have you done a lot of like the Twitter contests and things like that?
I have done zero. Honestly, it's really just now to the point where, I did a lot of the warnings were don't do anything until your book's complete,
Yeah.
So I kind of was, and I'll be honest, I've been working on this book for 6 years or more, really diligently in this last year and a half, 2 years. It was quite a monster, which is why it got broken down into pieces.
Can I ask that too? I really wanted to get your feedback on this comment that I made for Olivia's query, Dion, is that the word count, 104K, it's a little bit high for a fantasy and for a debut novel. Now, what my suggestion was, and I've made this to a few other people whose queries I've critiqued, is that, you've edited, you've done as much as you can do at this point. Maybe someday you'll be able to cut it down more if it's not working or whatever. But I've read so much that is such a turnoff to an agent or publisher, that over 100K mark for debut novel. So to minimize that, I would recommend moving that word count down to the bottom.
Okay.
Like recap the statistics of your book down at the bottom so that's not the first thing I'm seeing as an agent publisher. Hook me on your story, hook me on, that Southern fantasy, that genre, that great, wordsmith building you have, and leave that little tiny red flag, because they might see it as that, all the way down at the bottom. It's there. We're not omitting it, but downplay it. Gotcha. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Dion?
Well, we talked about this a little at the beginning, and this is just my personal opinion, and I really liked seeing the entry with the specific targeted genre, not a 6-7 period genre, the title and word count, even though it was a larger word count, because what she then goes on to say is the second installment is nearing completion. So I'm already thinking, okay, this book is larger than normal, but it is part of a series. So what this tells me is it could potentially be a standalone book that we could be successful enough to sign the entire series. And then I was already thinking in my head, I know it's 104,000 words before I get too attached to what she's about to say. And so then as I'm reading what she's telling me about the book, that 104,000 words is still in my head, and I'm thinking, can I make a 104,000 word story out of what she's saying, or is it possible we could cut it down if I love the story enough?
Mm-hmm.
The other way is if it's at the end and I love the book and then it's like, oh, and it's 104,000 words, I might go, oh. So knowing it from the start for me was great, but I can see where for some other publishers, it could be something to put at the bottom.
Yeah. I love it because there's so many schools of thought, because what you bring up there as well is something that I mentioned in my notes that I hear a lot about. Don't mention that it's a series. Don't mention that you've already got book 2 and book 3 planned if you haven't even sold book 1. So I've read that that's a lot of times, that's a red flag. So what I've advised people is to, hey, it has series potential, because I don't know. And again, there's so many schools of thought about it, but that's what I've heard some comments of, hey, why are you, writing book 2 and book 3 if you haven't even sold book 1 yet? So again, there's so many things you can do, and you can tweak your query, and you can, be careful about whom you're querying to. Just query, bunches of people, tweak it, and see what your request rate turns out to be.
Okay.
Try different things.
Yeah. That's a really good point, because we have been kind of burned on a series before where I signed a book and I was told specifically that the rest of the series would be done XXX, and it wasn't done XXX, and when it was done, it wasn't quality. And so I really regretted signing that series because the first book wasn't strong enough to be a standalone without the rest of the series. So that's really good feedback, James. So if your book is part of the series, make sure it can stand alone. I know it's getting a little late here, so let's kind of start to wrap up on the end. Olivia, what other questions do you have for James that hasn't been covered so far, or what kind of final feedback have we not gotten to from you yet, James?
Okay, I'm still a little unclear on the last paragraph on the bio. So basically in the bio, what I'm going to talk about is the blog and kind of leave it at that, right? And why I liked, why I write, basically. Was that, did I get that right? Personalized. Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
Because you have experience in Georgia, and the Southern fiction is such a heavy requested genre right now.
Yeah.
I would say why you are tied to the South.
Gotcha.
Why
I grew up there.
Okay, right. Yeah, see, tell me that, because then I'm going to be like, oh, she's so connected to the South. And so this isn't just going to be somebody who looked at a couple pictures on Google and tried to put it in. You're going to have those nuances of life in your book.
Gotcha.
So put that on there, give me a one-liner about your blog, and just a one-liner about why you write. Keep it short and sweet, 3-4 sentences.
Like, ask yourself, why are you the person to tell this story? Answer that question. Why do you, Olivia, are you the right person to tell our nameless heroine's story? And put that in there. Yeah. So, or, if I don't know if there's a reason that you wrote this specific book, because that's kind of a formula that I've used before. This is the type of person that I am, and this is what I sought to do in writing this book. Maybe this is where you tinker around with that last sentence about miracles occurring and learning to trust your heart. There's been something that has happened to you that made that an important enough theme for you to invest $104K about that. Give me a line at the end about why that is. Why are you the person to write this? Gotcha. Am I off pace with that, Dion, or?
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
Right on.
Awesome.
Okay, so I'm going to give the panel here a minute to introduce themselves, because if you want to continue the question or the commentary, if you want to talk to Olivia about her query, we screenshotted it a little bit earlier, so you've had the chance to read it. If you want to talk to James about your query, if you want to talk to me about your query, because we actually get a lot of questions from authors about queries who they say, I want to submit to you, how should I write a query letter? Which don't email a publisher asking them to write your query letter for you. But since we're part of French Press Bookworks here doing this, go ahead and reach out to me on Twitter, and I will do my best to help you. So James and Olivia, go ahead and introduce yourselves. Tell people how they can find you. Go ahead and do a plug for your website. James, feel free to plug your books.
Oh boy. Okay, well then I can go first then. I'm James Stryker, and you can find me online, Twitter at jstryker21. I also have my website, jamesstryker.com. My first debut novel, Assimilation, was published in June by Momentum Pan Macmillan. I have a second novel, Boy, A Journey, that is being published by Nine Star Press in December, and a third book coming out, I think they said in February, Simplicity of Being Normal. Yay! I write in multiple genres. As Dion said, I'm fantasy, sci-fi, and my next two novels are literary. And one of the things that I love to do when I am not writing my own stuff is I love to critique queries. So yes, if anyone needs help with their query, I'd like to think I'm half decent at writing one and would love to give you some feedback and, you know, insight into whatever I can do to help. So yes, look me up. I'm happy to help you.
That makes it my turn. My name is Olivia Harrell, and my pen name is OJ Barre. So you can find me on Twitter at OJ Barre Author. I'm also on Facebook under that same name. And my blog is That Rebel blog.blogspot.com.
That's so cute. That is so cute. I love it. That's great. Yeah, so reach out to the author panel. Olivia, as you get ready to query, we would love feedback on how your query process is going, what people are saying when you finally do get published. You know, keep us in the loop, stay in contact with us. And thank you both so much for joining the panel tonight, as well as dealing with the little tech glitch that put us on for tomorrow night. So thanks for popping in anyway, James, and giving us your night. So
I'm sorry again, my bad. Oh, and Olivia, I'll go ahead and I will send you back the detailed query critique as well. So wonderful.
And I wanted to thank both of you guys for this, for your undivided attention. I feel so special, and thank you so much.
You are special.
It's been a pleasure.
So,
yes.
Yeah. Next week we are talking. I forget what next week's topic is, but you can go to French Press Bookworks Author Roundtable and check that out. And then we're going to be taking a break the week of the 6th. So we will see you on the 2nd and back again on the 16th. So feel free to join a future panel. Or if you have an idea for a workshop, send it to us online and we can build a workshop for some of your concerns just for you. So everybody have a great evening, great morning, great afternoon, depending on where you are, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.